Hey everyone, this is Seema here from CSA Bangalore chapter. Today we have Hilal Lone, wherein we are doing a podcast series with him on trending cybersecurity topic, which is AI interjection with cybersecurity, wherein we are taking insights from him on various topics. So today we would be talking on AI and cyber risk and compliance management and balancing security with data protection and also on AI driven threat detection and response. So over to you, Hilal. Maybe you can give a small introduction of yourself.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Really, it is a pleasure being on the podcast. And thanks, CSA, for inviting me. So I've been in the industry for over 18 years now, and all of my 18 years have been in security. So right now, I'm the CISO, and basically, before this, I was CISO at Remote. And prior to that, I was data CFO, the CISO at Download. Still,
I'm sorry. Thank you so much for the introduction. So, let me start with a question with you on how AI can help automate regulatory compliance and mitigate compliance risk.
yeah, so coming basically from and I did look at the institute, so we deal with regulations on a daily basis. On any given day, we are doing some reviews, some assessments, some audits, right? So it's a ending story actually every single day. We have to deal with this technical compliance, we are doing business governance, we are doing vetting, and all sorts of basically different tasks that are associated with compliance, right? And one of the challenges when we actually are using traditional ways of doing is compliance activities or audit activities is to basically understand the clarity or basically facing an audit or are we compliant with basically the directions or the guidelines that the regulatory bodies have actually specified for us. And it's always basically challenging to basically know the maturity or level of preparation when it comes to basically being ready for a compliance related activity. So it is basically actually coming and essentially become a bit more agile, a bit more nimble in sticking to the audience. But I think it has a lot to do with multiple different things, right? So if we are actually specifically talking about say technical compliance, right? So there's a different points of view and actually see how it actually comes into place. One is when a guidelines issued by the bank or a regulations issued by the bank or any law actually comes into effect. So what happens is that there's always this ambiguity of what does it mean. So everybody has a different kind of okay, it applies to us and does not apply to us. It's coverage is only up to this one, it's not covering everything else. Right? So there's always going to be some ambiguity around what are the principles that are going to be required for us, or what are the requirements that we need to make sure that we adhere. So it's only going to be challenging and understanding. So I think about the season compliance professionals. Right? They even struggle with it. For example, I'm giving says okay, this is a guideline for this significant payment services, right? So I think it says that it's Friday and then the compliance professionals themselves actually check whether they give other folks on the street if they're understanding of the guidelines going or not. It's just the least we are able to do right now. So then basically the compliance professionals are actually struggling so hard to understand the implications of a guideline or a regulation. Imagine when this has to be translated into requirements or business requirements, what does happen? So that the people who will be doing that, on the engineering side, so they don't know exactly what needs to be done. We cannot visit the compliance resources less. So they cannot go every single time to the engineering and extend to that. All these other requirements that they need to estimate this into the product. So that our products actually comply. So this results basically in a lot of ambiguity for everybody. So one of the ways they actually like simplify this is basically like building this knowledge set or building this content set. That's actually universal, meaning that needs to business a simple part of a particular guideline or a regulation are. They can query based some of these basically like models or models that basically can be within an organization. And they can most basically effectively tell them, okay, these are the requirements and you're part of this operation. All these lines and this basically covered and this is regulations. So an engineer or a developer or an architect does not necessarily need to reach out to the compliance team to understand, okay, yeah, this is the thing that I need to live on, this is the way I need to code. So that's one way that massively simplifies basically the requirements to meet the compliance guidelines. On the compliance side, the validation becomes easier. It becomes a lot more simpler. To understand whether the calculation towards estimating the guideline is basically accurate. Correctness of the data is another thing that's very important. So, not happens is that there's so many things that can come into the scope of compliance. But is every attribute actually necessary? Is every data point necessary? Is every artifact necessary? Not always, right? So, in that context, the correctness of the data becomes very, very important. So, the AI models are significantly basically they have the capability to basically sift through the data and identify the correct data that needs to be audited and that needs to be prepared. And when you have that kind of capability, I think from the company's execution point of view, that becomes easier for people to manage. In addition to that, they also basically streamlines some of the very critical frameworks that need to be deciphered by the teams. So nobody has the time to basically go through like hundreds of pages to build basically like a matrix in which they can say, oh, this requirement is met by this symbol. So they can actually read through the documents and they can simplify basically the complexity and the requirements basically adherence. And then you can build a framework which will be easier for you to identify, okay, yeah, this is something that I need to do. So
Right.
if I have to do it, it means what would be possible. But when AI models, the AI actually comes out, it becomes like easier to understand. What are the entities that come into the scope of the audit? What are the resources that come into the audit? And what I'm going to need to be doing to make sure that I'm actually complying with the related requirements or compliance requirements. So I think in those areas, the AI can be massively helpful.
So, according to you, what kind of what framework should organizations follow for AI governance? Like for example, like NIST AI risk management framework or OAS for LLMs. What kind of framework do you think organizations should follow for AI governance?
Uh, Framework and starting with them, making that as a baseline is always good, right? So I think that's not a particular framework that is mature now because we have all the network. So everybody has to understand that in the short term, right? So they may actually need to customize the frameworks a lot.
True,
It's not always going to be possible for them to say, I'll be the next day, I will this framework and I will be good to go.
compliant. Yeah,
It doesn't work that way.
that's
You know,
true.
that is other areas governance frameworks. Right? So if you pick them up and you customize it, you are actually working for a workshop, right? So it's very important that actually this is not just for the AI frameworks, right? So if you look at the earlier frameworks, like we have CMS benchmarks, we have frameworks and all of those things, right? ISO frameworks for that matter. So all of those frameworks, I yet to meet somebody who has implemented them in their capacity.
Okay,
So the AI governance frameworks, being necessary as they are, so they need to be customized to the organization needs. If, for example, I take example of a framework understand that, okay, this is good, right? So for me to basically sort of like use my tech, basically advanced tech requirements and controls and set up this is the golden framework that we use. And because of the nature of the business that you're into, the industry that you're into, a lot of those are not going to be applicable to you. Say, for
True.
example, the identification, like you don't need to do all of that. Right?
Yes.
So,
Unless
so
you're in data
necessarily
industry.
you are going to be burdened with so much
Yeah.
that you will not be able to basically understand, like, oh, what do I need to do again?
True.
So it's better to basically study them very carefully, see what is applicable to your organization, pick up the parts that are relevant to you. Yes, for example, I go ahead, so I'm going to basically like use it as an instrument. That's going to be a big mistake.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree with you, Hilal. So, my next question to you is on how does AI impact cyber insurance policies and risk assessments?
Uh, yeah, that's a bit of a loaded question.
I know.
So, I'm not sure, like, to be honest with you, like, I'm not sure. Because each new technology that we actually build, each new tech stack that we have has its own implication on okay, what our resilience means and what insurance I need to be to get my organization right. So, in particularly, if we speak in Indian context, we but uh, organizations still do not have insurance, right? So, I mean, if we actually have some impact on the field and insurance aspect, because of the, I think that's what we obviously talk
Okay.
about. I think resiliency like this, right? So, there was no major insurance or something like that. Some of the incident that so now, because I can see happening, everybody wants to know that, so the insurance comes into it in a different way. So it is an issue remedy that's in place. So insurance actually has basically like changes, policy changes according. So I think that's, I don't think it's, I don't believe that it will not have, but I'm not exactly sure how much. Because we have had obviously technology transitions or transformations like well, basically the last decade. Like, so I've been doing virtualization, computing, we are doing different source of zero trust and things like that, even security. So we're hoping that we can reduce the insurance costs and things like maybe it does, maybe it does not. Even the cyber insurance is also evolving. They're also trying to adapt. So from their perspective also, it's not always black and white.
Mhm.
Okay, I need this much coverage. Let's say, for example, if I have $10 million coverage right now, does it mean that I'm going to have only 7 million on coverage? No, sure. Right? I can, I have like 15 million, maybe not, I don't know. Right? So I would love to talk to people about, like, okay, how that will actually change. But right now, I feel like it's more like, okay, let's go with the flow.
Okay.
So because most of the cyber insurance these days, there's a thing that's going on that people end up with a general insurance. So, unless there's a regulatory need to have a specific set of insurance, most of the organizations will actually go into insurance and club that with cyber insurance
Okay.
because you don't want to maintain multiple policies, you don't want to maintain different aspects. So, that's actually a good way to do it. So, I sort of like support that point of view because then you don't have to manage multiple different plans, multiple different commercial content escalations and all that, right? So you know we need to get in touch with it becomes easier to get claims and things like that. Right?
Okay.
So, so to your question, like I said, it's a bit difficult to like come with a statements that saying that okay, this is what it
Sure, no issues. I mean, I understand. So my next question to you on the AI and privacy, wherein we are talking about balancing security with data protection. So how does AI impact data privacy and regulatory compliance, like GDPR or CCPA?
is. There is an aspect, right? So I think what's important to understand is it's not, it did not necessarily, it's not, it was never optional,
Mhm.
right? So, yeah, I mean, we have had some regulations that have come into place, and there has been a little bit more urgency. It's like, so, but I think it was never optional. right? So it was always right. Right. So I don't think it would make my attention to it earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the focus in the spotlight on DPDP and things like that, so it becomes a lot more common, right?
Yeah.
So imagine it like that's solving a connection, right? So this cornerstone is the core principle of security, right? So if you don't have data protection, how would you assume that you are going to stop people from exploiting your data? How are you going to stop impact from data breaches, for example, right? So it's very difficult to this basically think about okay, having data protection is an optional component. It was never an optional component.
True.
Right? So now coming into basically AI aspect of basically privacy technology and data engineering and data protection mechanisms, I think uh, this is one of the use cases which I think is very, very clear and very apparent for basically AI to business. For example, like when we have to listen to data protection or data privacy implementation. So what happens is that like a lot of times you are not sure about the data that actually comes into our organization, both structured and unstructured, and what is a good type, what doesn't need a good. So the classification of the data, the discovery of the data, and implementing security controls on top of the data. If the data is somehow exploited, being misused, being only basically utilized and things like that. Right? So all of those trees can be simplified with the help of primarily. I think cheap distinct use cases one is basic classification of the data.
Mhm.
I think it's going to be like important. The second is this like being these requirements so that are needed to basically make sure that okay, we are maintaining the privacy based controls, right? So I think that's actually important. And third one, I think is basically choosing the right set of credentials and right set of credentials that will be used to basically access that data. So
Yeah.
in the different terms, right? So basically, if you want to think about, okay, now that I know that, okay, it's going to be discern your data, and classify it, now what, right? So you think about, okay, the these are misnown, we have this applying access control policy, which is broad-based access control or whatever technology you're using. And then, of course, implementing some technical controls, right? So like, for example, anonymize the data. Or you want to implement encryption on the data,
Mhm.
right? Or you want to basically use tokenization for the data. So in that context, AI can help, right? So basically telling you, okay, this is the appropriate amount of controls that are required for you to basically make sure that the privacy requirements are actually met. Second, basically, for example, like this one is going to be challenging to basically say, okay, I'm going to be using this data for a particular purpose for which I'm. So in that context, what happens is that also becomes difficult to say, okay, I'm going to be using this data this and this purpose. So in that context, you can build those dynamic rule sets, but it may not allow people to use data for which is not supposed to be used. So in that context, it's very, very important. So GDPR, not GDPR, is related relationship. So all of them are only developing that's basically okay. You need to ensure that it's not basically misused, data is not exposed, it does not use without the consent of the developers. So in that all those three things, actually it's AI can help in all of those three stages. What I believe is that in going forward there will be a lot more effort into basically using AI in data privacy and protection.
Mhm.
Because it has a very obvious use case. I think people already started building products around that. I mean, I'm sure we'll see a lot of products actually coming to the market that's actually built on top of AI to solve some of these issues. I just
Yeah.
not sure so working on this. The
Mhm.
products, right? Um, but yeah, this is a very, very obvious and a very clear use case for data privacy.
Thank you so much for those insights. So, my next question is on what privacy preserving AI techniques can be used in cybersecurity, like federated learning or homomorphic encryption. What kind of AI techniques can be used?
Sure. So, these are honestly very challenging. Right? So, for example, the home for encryption.
Mm-hmm.
So still has to be used in the mainstream. I've not seen a single product that said that we were using home for encryption on scale. Haven't seen one so far. This partnership means the market that said, okay, we have semi-home for encryption that's enabled. Or we do
Mm-hmm.
organization and encryption that's when data remains protected even when somebody is actually accessing it. It doesn't work. Right? So at least in that sense doesn't. So it's somebody with a big display and but it's actually the reality.
Okay.
So I don't want to dismiss it for yeah, right. It's the biggest need for innovation in this like preserving technology side. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't work. So second is basically about the fact that isolation of data. I did privacy uh, isolation of that technique is I forgot what it was. But it has got to do with basically uh, democratization of data access and ensuring that even when somebody accesses the data, it still remains basically the in terms of its access and its usage and things like that. So data isolation is always going to be important. There's no doubt about it. So I mean that we want to basically create segments or we classify the data into different blocks where everybody will be accessing a particular level. So I think those things are more or less available right now in like the international world. But most of these basic preserving techniques are in to basically like no access, but basically not actually experience. So that's something magical. It's not really magical. It's the data center, that's the way what you use it. It's actually magical. So that's sounds good, right? So I would jump up basically to basically access you know current technology that will allow me to do so. But overall, I think there's lot needs to be done to basically make it mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
To basically create it at a level where everybody can benefit from it. I think that's a little bit away from that. But hopefully, yeah, we'll bring a lot of innovation into it and hopefully we'll be able to use it.
Certainly. Yeah, I agree with you. So my next question is on how can organization ensure AI-driven security tools do not compromise user privacy?
AI driven tools will compromise privacy.
Yes.
That's pretty straightforward. I mean, not as straightforward as basically like determining who has access to what, right? But it's still important, basically from any technology, for example, most of the structured data in particular has some basically enrichment happening, doing our analytics and things like that. So it gets connected to different tool sets. And those tool sets basically work on APIs or networks and connectors or some message buses and things like that. So which means that there are certain basically activities and tasks that we need to do to ensure that okay, and those tools do not take advantage of that. Even if the administrator of those tools, user of those tools, do not abuse their basic privileges and preserve the privacy of the data. Even so, in the same packet, you can actually consider that okay, AI is going to come into the same. So, in whatever controls and whatever guidelines, be it process driven or be it tool driven or technology driven, whatever techniques and tools we are using to ensure that the privacy is preserved
Mhm.
when data is being accessed externally. So, the same basically needs to happen on AI driven tools as well. So one of the things that's very important is that for AI to be able to give you useful information or useful output, you will specifically as big as possible. The problem with that is that it's really assumed to basically translate AI models to basically the data that you give it. Um, There are expectations on the orders that you actually take about. So it's very important basically for all organizations and whoever's basically use the models to ensure that there are very strict guidelines and guidelines in place to ensure that the models do not go out of scope. It does not suffer from hallucination, it does not suffer from basically get exposure the data is not used up for the training and things like that. So it is not exported outside of your organization. Right? So all those controls need to be properly defined. So the best thing to do is the host that you want within your own domains and within your own infrastructure. Then basically utilizing third-party implementation. But if you have to use third-party implementation, which I think you should do only when you're exhausted, or so you should be able to basically make sure that partner that you will work with,
Mhm.
subscriber that you will work with, has the minimum controls in place to ensure that the data misuse doesn't. So I think every company, every organization that utilizes AI models needs to already have a specific policy that deals with this data governance. So how does that importantly basically access of the data, both systemic as well as user based? So those need to be differentiated and understood
Mhm.
in order for them to basically utilize that. And if somebody wants to use their models for sensitive data, we like this is in the stage, but if they have to,
Mhm.
then obviously like it needs to pass the listed audits of the company, which would be predicting the system utilization of data, transfer of the data, and storing the data, as well as basically running the data. So I think they should develop this kind of process in place to ensure that the data is not misused. Only then probably should be able to set up those. So I think if you recall, like last week, I was ministry actually said, okay, nobody should be using AI models. Right?
True. Yeah,
I don't blame them. The reason for that is basically like there are certain things that you are not sure. So
I know.
it's better to kind of like make sure
Avoid.
that you do your due diligence before you actually like utilize those services.
Certainly, I agree with you, Hilal, on that. We'll move to the next topic, which is on the AI-driven threat detection and response. So, according to you, how is AI improving threat detection accuracy and reducing response times?
Yeah, that's my favorite thing to talk about.
Yeah, I know.
So, take a word like so. So, you have traditional incident response management systems. And so, for example, you have security incident, you have management system, which you deploy your log collection, log analysis, and things like that. And you already have an analysis at firewall level or something like that, and it generates those alerts. You can make the data with threat intelligence and things like that. So you get some alerts in those alerts. And no matter how basically fine-tuned your policies are, you're still going to get a bunch of false positives and false negatives.
True.
Right? So, and from my point, from my experience, I worked in this particular field a lot. Coming, bringing them to meet them to respond, or meet them to detect first few incidents. Using traditional process and massive tasks to break it down. So the averages can actually like 33 days for everybody incident. So, I'm proud of the thing what that we have done. So we have some really brought down the we have it almost an hour, which is average an hour. So it's like get it right. So now the challenge is that like, no matter how you utilize those tools, it's you're going to have some basically weaknesses in them to be able to process data at scale. So now what it does is it gives you the flexibility. It gives you flexibility on multiple levels. First of all, like for example, like if you have a resource like that, because it's a response needs smart people, right? So you need people who can take decision and right? So they may not always basically have the luxury of saying that they have reached out to someone. He can let it be because something may be happening that may actually compromise your company, that may compromise your data. So you need to make very just decisions. Yeah. It's not always possible for everybody to make those decisions. So the planning, the experience required to make those kind of decisions like a semester.
True.
So the skills that are required for people who obviously do that kind of job. Surprising if you don't see it as that, but it is like that. So now what happens is that they, I want to basically utilize that kind of having all that kind of skill set. it's going to be difficult for me to basically those kind of people. Because given the scarce, yeah, you need to have information about everything that's going on. So AI comes in and makes them uh, trained away, basically. So you can, for example, this is the query on your database to understand it. So it's from AI to be able to understand what the ML is, what's SQL query, how do I actually build those SQL queries, how do I create a rule to ensure that, okay, I detect this intrusion as well. So all of those things are basically big things for someone to run and share them out of time. So in this particular perspective, what AI does is basically takes those abilities. So you don't understand that you know the syntax or you're doing any natural language to basically dialogue what you mean. You can we can get the result. So I think this is brilliant. Not part of it is basically automated detection response. The automated detection, so um, the traditional correlation or traditional discovery of the incidents is dependent on this industry alerts that you can actually get from the logs that have been sent to you on a single location so that you can actually move all the sensors should be available for you to do correlation. So now it's not always possible, really. It is possible as well. So, right? So it's the number that we use is like in a say maybe just 20 years, I mean 24 hours, sometimes days. So it wasn't always efficient. So it brings the efficiency in place. So what it does is that we don't need to basically normalize the data. We don't need to kind of like consume the data. It basically does works on the data, it works on the things. So you can potentially select the new structure or whatever you structure also doesn't matter. So you don't have to kind of like figure out okay, what connectors do you need, what collectors do you need, what protocols are basically you need. So you can directly find the data. So that makes it really, really efficient. And that autocorrelation and the correlation becomes a lot more simplified. So you get detection on multiple levels, on multiple deeper levels. So we have actually surface level aspect nowadays, but I'm sure I'm 100% positive that it has a lot more potential than that. We can use causal AI, we can use all sorts of different ML models to
Mhm.
basically go a lot more in depth of detection and sharing. So now the auto response in the showing, but it notice that so nobody is solving. So because of the inflexibility of it actually generating dynamic rules and having endless playbooks to build to ensure they work automated, response actually works. So that kind of thing can be solved with AI. Because AI can give you that flexibility of generating those playbooks depending on the circumstance of the event that was previously going on. But if we study that properly and we utilize that properly, so there's a lot of potential for us to ensure that AI will do automated response in a much better way. We don't basically rely on static playbooks, static rule sets, or rule engines. So indirectly, actually, create dynamic playbooks or dynamic workflows that will enable us to basically automate response in a much more seamless, much more efficient way.
Thank you so much, Hilal, for that information and the insights which you have thrown on the accuracy and reducing the response times for threat detection and response. So my next question will well little deeper in this topic. Just wanted to know what are the challenges of false positives and AI model bias in cybersecurity.
Um, I think in my survey, I should work on is that we are going to give some false positives because we actually create that model that extremes on data set that we have actually given it to be able to determine okay which are basically the events that need to be triggered, events that need to be triggered, or basically something needs to be activated or some workflow needs to be activated. So we tend to misunderstand that okay, we are not going to have false positives. And if you look at basically different OEMs and vendors, sensors, so they'll tell you that okay, because of the AI, you are not going to get false positives. This used to be a massive problem in some code analysis or even in the, I think on the analysis as well. This used to be a massive challenge. So now because of this specific instructions that you actually give your models, you would expect that it's not going to give you false positives. So in that context, so that's why I think it's actually very important that actually if it's very false positives in this kind of yeah, then it needs to find some babies a little bit more. So and then you can potentially get a lot more like actionable intelligence.
True.
But then actually getting false positives and false negatives that will take a lot of time. So I think to be able to like leverage models to their full capacity, training models are extremely important. And ensuring that they works on the data that's actually much more relevant to you, right, is also important. So I think because we have false positives, false negatives, is the best thing to do, but at the same time, it is pretending the right way.
Yeah, completely agree with your Hilal on that. So my next question is like, how can organizations integrate AI-powered cybersecurity operations centers?
I think we thought a bit about it when we were talking about artificial engineering and threat detection. So those are the parts of the SOC, right? So actually SOC. So incident response, threat intelligence, detection response. I think those are the components of SOC. So it's like making sure that okay, there is um, like what analytical power and lot more intelligence driven this architecture. I think that's actually very important. Basically ensuring that the SOC remains relevant data in an organization. And in general, I think it has a lot, like I said earlier, it has simplified basically the entry of professionals into this in these roles. For example, you are an incident engineer or you are an incident security analyst. So you don't need to learn all the technologies. Someone that can simplify. And the extent that you're actually going to have is a lot more simplified. So you can have a data lake. In that data lake, you put all kinds of data. And then you're basically just queries on top of data. And you get the results, you get the actionable intelligence, right? Then you obviously have the technology that can support it. So you want to build workflows on top of that. Or you want to build, you want to create basically auto healing mechanisms and things like that, or analytical platforms. That's possible as well. So you can make a you have basically like firewall and sweep all sorts of infrastructure that you have in place. A lot more intelligent. Then the data victims side of it is a lot more simple for you to understand. So I think it has helped a lot. It's a very big help. So I look forward to basically seeing how they actually get involved.
Certainly, yeah. We also would be looking forward how it works actually in future. So thank you so much, Hilal, for being here and sharing your insights on this wonderful topics which we discussed on cybersecurity. Hoping to see you again, maybe in other next series of ours. Thank you so much for joining.
Some of the things you was really fantastic too.
Uh,
And
same here.
I look forward to the next one. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Hilal. Have a nice day.
It's a